At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today and let us surprise you.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Okay, so we are back with Alison, and we're so excited to see you. You have some big news coming up in another week. Why don't you tell us what's going on a little bit with the case, and then we'll go back into the timeline of how things evolved.
So there are some very big things in just in a week, 6 days. There will be a hearing, which is called a pretrial conference. And at that hearing, basically, I'm told that it's when like both sides talk about where they're at, where they want to head. My father is yet to actually plead guilty or not guilty. So they're telling me that he may or may not. But I really, in my gut, feel like that's what's going to happen at this hearing, that he is going to either plead guilty or not guilty. I would assume that he would plead guilty, but I don't know that for sure. They have already told me that they have the trial on the docket for May, which is very interesting. So with all of this, there's so much like reading between the lines because there's so much secret stuff where they're like, well, we can't tell you. But so the last I talked to the DA, I was told there's no way that they would schedule the trial until at the earliest September. And I thought, well, okay, September it is. And the next thing I know, this hearing on, in 6 days was supposed to be what's called the call of the list. And they told me it was going to be like 2-3 minutes, super, super fast, just an update on how things are going. And the next thing I know, I kind of confirmed saying, well, I'm coming. And the next thing I know, they're telling me, oh, well, the judge actually moved it up like in the order of things and turned it into a pretrial conference, which is kind of like in order of justice, but it skipped the reason for the meeting to begin with. Mm-hmm. And then it turned into from he's not going to be there to he is going to be there. And I said, well, he's deaf, so you are going to provide an interpreter, correct? And they said, oh, yes, it'll be just like the last hearing. Well, the last hearing, there was an interpreter assigned to him. So where he was sitting with his lawyer was an interpreter. And then there was another interpreter who stood next to the judge and would interpret to Bud, my father, what the judge was saying. So they said it would be just like that. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So, the county is shelling out money for interpreters and now we're changing dates. And I was kind of given the heads up that we're on the docket for May. And so what they're not telling me in my hunch is that they may have some sort of idea that he is going to plead guilty and waive the trial and just go right to sentencing. Otherwise, that's my thought. I just have hunches to base on that, but there's a whole lot of things that you have to read in between the lines that they don't tell you. And I feel strongly that might be what's going to happen that day.
So has the DA been pretty cooperative with you and keeping you informed of what's going on?
Actually, yes. It's not the DA that usually reaches out to me. It's their victim advocate. So she's like the communication between the DA and myself. He has been accessible though. If I needed, he'll call me. I had some questions about some things and like why they were skipping the call of the list and all of that. And he called me personally to explain it. So he's been very good to work with. Yes.
That's great. That's great. That's good to hear, because we're always about victims advocates, and a lot of times they don't get a lot of the attention or information when during this process. They kind of keep them insulated. So that's good that they're keeping you in the loop, and it's great that you're going there, so you'll have some FaceTime there. Is like, when was the last time you saw your father?
The last hearing, but before that, it was like decades.
How long ago was the last hearing again?
The last hearing was in November.
November.
No.
What was that?
Arrested.
So you hadn't seen
He was
him.
arrested in November. It was in December.
So you hadn't seen him for decades before that.
Right. No.
What was
I
that?
have not.
What was that like when you saw him? He goes,
Oh. I mean, I have to take a deep breath just thinking about it.
sure.
I remember, like, it's interesting because I'm a CODA, child of a deaf adult, and I was always like the person like organizing things and making sure that everything's okay and communicating and thinking ahead and always trying to think about what the perceived need might be. And I'm in the courtroom and there were a bunch of deaf people there, and I was saying, like, where's the interpreter for them? And I was really upset because they told me there'd be an interpreter. So the whole time I'm signing to the deaf people saying, I'm so sorry. They told me there'd be an interpreter. Something's wrong with the interpreter and they're not here right now. And I asked the crowd, is there anyone here that is hearing and knows sign that could help? Because I couldn't be the interpreter. And a woman stood up and said, I'm a CODA. Nice to meet you. And she said, I'll sign. So she stood up and signed for, the audience, so to speak. And so I'm like feeling good about that. And then I hear my husband go, Al. And he's like, he's coming in. And I turned and they were reeling him in. No one told me we're bringing him in. Nobody said, like, sit down. And I turned and looked and it was like, oh my gosh. And I like ran to my spot next to my husband. So I never, like, on his way in, it was just a quick glance and I ran to my spot. So I didn't like connect eye to eye with him. I'm sure he knew who I was, but so I ran back to my spot. And then, afterwards, I thought, I'm not missing this opportunity. So when it was done, I stood up and I walked over to like the opposite. So I was sitting on this side of the court and he was in front of me. And there was like the aisleway here. And I stood right here, like as far as they'd let me go without saying, you can't go past here.
Mhm.
And I just stood with my arms folded like this, shaking my head, like glaring at him. And he looked up for a matter of 10 seconds and looked right back down. And the neat part of that is all of this for me is also like reclaiming what he thought he took from me. And like he never broke me. And I never believed that my mother left me. As much as he wanted me to believe that, I never did. There were moments that I was like, really? Could she have? But I always reasoned back out of that because of how awful he was. I thought she'd never leave us with him. Never. So all of this really for me is proving to myself and showing him that I'm nothing like you and you have no part of who I am as a person and the gifts that I share with society, being a teacher, all those things, none of that comes from you. None of it. So like I'm proud for him to see me and see that I'm a grown woman and I'm strong and confident, and I'm not afraid of him anymore.
Yeah. So you said they wheeled him in. What's his physical condition right now?
So I believe the reason why they put him in a wheelchair was because he walks with a cane, and they didn't want him to have the cane. I'm assuming, no one told me this, but I'm assuming, he could whack people with that cane. So they would rather him sit in a wheelchair and wheel him in than have him walk in with a cane, would be my guess. But they say that, his health is deteriorating and that he's 76. Actually, I think on the 23rd of March, he'll be 77. So he's up there. But I think his health is declining, and I can't imagine all the stress bodes well for him. So, he's getting up there.
Yeah. And then is he in custody?
He is. So he is in the Crawford County Jail. And I guess until sentencing, he wouldn't move, to the actual big house,
Yeah, prison.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back, because last week we ended with you being taken in by your amazing teacher, who was basically like your legal guardian through high school, and gave you that stability that you were lacking with your father after your mother vanished. So let's talk about what happened after high school and how did you get to the point of your father being arrested?
Sure. So I will say that I went to live with them at 14. And that was such a pivotal time because I was starting to get in trouble because I just didn't care anymore. I kind of had this, like, I just don't care. I have no reason to be good because look at my life, and so I was starting to get in trouble. Things were starting to take a turn, even though I had always been that overachiever and wanting to not fight, but like work hard for stars and treats and accolades, whatever. Like I always wanted to be successful. Anyway, so me going to live with them was a turning point where I was starting to veer, in a negative direction, and moving in with them put me right back on that track of like, I want to be good because I want to be kept. I want this to work. And I'm a good kid. I work hard. I'll help you with whatever. And all of those things kept me moving forward. And, while I lived with them, I did things I never would have had a chance to do. For example, I was very athletic. I ran track. I played volleyball. I played soccer. All the things I never would have had a chance to do. Our relay team for track broke the school record every year of high school. We went to districts and all those things that I never would have had an opportunity to do. And I feel like the more you taste success and, enjoy that, the more you want more. And so I continued to want more. And where the message I had been given growing up with my father was that I'd never amount to anything. And, I was going to be just like my mother, and I was going to just take off with some man, and I'd be pregnant before high school and blah, blah. And I got a very different message with the Dinsmores who had taken me in. And the message from them was, you can be anything you want to be. You just got to work hard sometimes. And, the sky's the limit. And it really turned, my trajectory, so to speak, because I then yearned for more and yearned to be successful. And I always, just like how I was born, I always wanted to help people. So I applied to college, got accepted, went to a local college because I didn't want to go too far away. And my freshman year, I was a nursing major. And the funniest story there is I was on the ROTC team club. I don't know what you call that organization. I joined it because I saw the boys running outside my dorm room. And I was like, oh, that would be so fun to have people to run with. So I joined it because I wanted to run with the boys, and because I could, the captain was, saying, she's done more push-ups than you, and like
Mhm.
tease the boys. And I loved that. But I was also a nursing major, which was very sought out. We went on a field trip with ROTC to Walter Reed Military Hospital, and we were in like this observation room and watching a gallbladder surgery, and I passed out.
Oh.
And I was like, well,
So much for nursing.
so much for that. So I very quickly decided this is probably not for me, and then switched my major that following year to social work, and finished college in with a degree in social work. During that time, I would say that there was a lot of self-discovery, and I'm sure a lot of people say that, about their time when they first leave the nest, so to speak, and discovering yourself. And I want to back up just a little bit and say that right before I graduated from high school, my adoptive mom,
Mhm.
Judy, had suggested that we go through the paperwork process to declare my mother legally dead. And I was like, why? It was a super, super emotional, like, why would you even say that? And she said to me that there are survivor benefits that you are, eligible for. And she said, what better gift from a mother than to be able to give her daughter, some financial support to get her to college.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, then I was able to look at it a little differently, because at first I thought, I still struggled with, I don't want to be responsible for that. I don't want to be the one who signed off on saying, my mother is legally dead now. But
Well, at that
like,
point, did you still believe that she was dead, or was she missing? You believe that she was dead?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. She was still missing, but I did.
And then was the police involved at all still?
They were involved as much as like, it's an active investigation, and once a
Got it.
month we do something to say it's still active. But I would say that my adoptive mother, Judy, had some contact with them,
Got it.
because I think she was more like involved and interested in finding out about what happened. I was just like, I wanted to separate from it and immerse myself in the new family and new life
Mhm.
I was in. And
You've moved
I didn't
on.
want to associate with that at all. And she had actually said, my senior year of high school, she said, do you want to go to the police and find out what happened, find out what they know? And I said, no. I was like, no, I don't want any part of that. And then, the more she brought it up, she's like, you might want to like hear what they have to say. You don't have to say anything. I'll go with you. I'll do the talking. So eventually I realized that, like, I think it was important to her to go. And as much as I kind of wanted to distance, I felt like, I guess they should probably know what's going on or not. So we did go, and she did all the talking. I just kind of sat there. And at the time, I remember they took out this huge, probably 3-inch binder and set it on the table. And it was like this, poof, and set it on the table. And I'll never forget that. I don't know his name, but the officer put his hand, like folded his hands, put his hands on top of the file and leaned forward and said, in this file, we have everything we need to convict your father of murder, but a body. And without a body, there's nothing we can do.
Oh, wow.
You can't prove a crime was committed. And I had never heard, I always believed that he did it, but I had never heard it like that. I had never heard it phrased like that from law enforcement, no less. He said, it's an open investigation. We can't let you see anything, but look at this file. It's full of evidence that is circumstantial without finding her.
So frustrating for them too. Can you imagine? Like,
sure.
you have a file like this. They did that newspaper article. Like, people knew
Yeah.
that she wasn't missing, And
Right.
yet here you can't find the body. And that's the other flip side for law enforcement too, because it's like everyone's always blaming them. Well, it's an open investigation. You're not doing anything, but they were doing things and they just couldn't go through with an arrest because they didn't have a body. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Well, and I'm kind of like 50-50 on that one. Like there was a lot of time that I feel like the case wasn't handled properly. They didn't do what they should have. Things were botched. I would say later in the last 5 years or so, it has really been worked hard. But I would imagine that they'd get to a certain point and they've got, in their defense, I do think they're overworked. So when you're looking at these cases, I would imagine your attention draws to what's solvable. And you're hitting, dead ends with my mother's case. So you can only do that so often before you're like, well, I'm going to go where there's more likely an opportunity to get somewhere, because it wasn't my case.
No, I agree with you. They are overworked. They're under supported. And because we deal with this all the time with law enforcement. We tell them, I'm working on this case, but I'm also working on 250 others.
Right.
That it's like
which is incredible that expectation would even be offered to one person.
That's what I mean.
How is it possible? Yeah.
It's and also also with missing persons, like the first 48 hours are the most important. And this whole idea of waiting just drives me crazy, because every single case that we've worked on where they're being told to wait, you're just missing those moments of when you can find this person. I mean, it's waiting for what? If the person's missing and everyone knows it's suspicious, what happened with your mother is suspicious. Was there any evidence of an affair? Was there another man that she was talking to? Did anyone ever say they saw her with someone else, or did she tell her girlfriends that she was with someone else? Did any of that happen?
There was a friend that she worked with who was married with kids, much older than her, like 25 years older than her. And I think that he was trying to help her get out, but the police questioned him and, ruled him out. And actually in the last, 5 years or so, I can't remember exactly when, but one of that guy's daughters reached out to me and said, I just want you to know that I am the daughter of Arthur, this friend of my mother's. And he never stopped talking about her, how worried he was. And he always believed that, he was trying to help her get out of an awful situation, always believed that he did something, that whatever happened was at his hands.
Who's the mystery man that she ran off with? She would never come back for her kids. She would never contact her family again.
That friend never left. He didn't run off. He didn't disappear as well.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to kind of signpost here the fact that, because we've dealt with this with a lot of families of missing people, and it's so important, like Cindy said, the first 48. And a lot of times, the law enforcement, they're not going to do anything, but it doesn't mean that you guys can't do anything. The victim's family can't do anything, because, we know the Jennifer Kesse case, and we're still very friendly with their family. And they were like a poster child for what you do, because the cops told them, we can't do anything. When they know their daughter, they would never not check in, that they would never do this and never do that. And so when she didn't check in, I think it was only 8 hours or 6 hours, when they heard about the boyfriend leaving and he hasn't heard from her, they were like, something's up. And they took it upon themselves, and the cops weren't doing anything. Fortunately, they knew a local reporter, and they got the word out very quick. They had people with signs out and everything like that. And, granted, that case is still open, but they're still pursuing. They're still pursuing very, hard on what happened to Jennifer Kesse. So, that's why it's, because the law enforcement, they don't have the resources to kind of look individually. People go missing, people drop off the face of the planet, people go, some people disappear themselves. They don't want to deal with it anymore. And they just kind of, a stressed out wife or husband, they just check out. They're like, go dark, go live in another country, go live in another town. They don't want to deal with the pressure of life or family or finances anymore, and they just want to deal with their own stuff. But it's great that you had that meeting with that detective, and he brought out that binder because then he was illustrating to you guys, said, listen, this is where we are. Okay. And the fact that he actually said that, because we've had investigators tell us that too, in cases that we work, we said, listen, and they'll do it off camera and stuff like that. We got enough to, we have so much information here. He goes, but like you said, we don't have a body, and, no body, no crime. And that's, they can't, even if if someone saw your father driving to some place and stuff like that, assuming that, and his alibi didn't match up, still, it's hard in a court of law to prove that he did something if there's no physical body there.
And Pennsylvania is a very conservative state. So you really need to make sure your I's are dotted and T's crossed, because it's just not going to move forward otherwise.
Well, I'm sure they couldn't even have gotten a search warrant for the house because they didn't have any evidence of a crime. So how are they going to search the house? They would have been able to find the couch. They would have been able to at that time, there was no DNA really being used. So it's hard to say.
This is like a rural podunk area, everybody knows everybody. Everybody is related to everybody. It was a very, very tiny community where stuff like this didn't happen. It's 1981, where there isn't social media to spread the knowledge that something like this occurred. So, there's no copycats, that kind of stuff. So, it was much more believable that she'll be back. She took off, she'll be back, just a domestic dispute, than it was to believe that she was murdered. Like that was probably not likely in their minds as they were moving forward. Like, well, that stuff doesn't happen here,
Yeah. And plus the fact there was probably, I don't know, what was the name of the town again?
Little's Corners.
So they probably only had one detective, if that.
Right. I don't even think so. I'm not really sure at the time, but I think even now, Meadville is the bigger city, next door to Little's Corners. And I would imagine that it's probably overseen by state police, because there is no local police department there.
Look at him, eating whatever he wants, never gaining a pound. While I'm stuck with the boring special and can't lose an ounce.
How's your lunch, man?
Amazing. Yours?
So good.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
Cool, buddy.
Weight loss isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. The affordable GLP-1 source that can fix your frustration with food.
So, same time next week?
No!
Definitely.
And your friends. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Whether you're packing for a vacation or dressing for a wedding, Nordstrom has head-to-toe looks for wherever summer takes you. From swimwear and bold color to romantic florals and dresses that make an entrance, find the right style for every unforgettable moment. Shop new arrivals from brands you love like Farm Rio, Free People, Vince, Waif, and Stod. Plus free shipping and returns and styling help whenever you need it. Make it all so easy. Shop now in stores at Nordstrom.com or download the Nordstrom app.
At first, I didn't think it was real. I woke up to this blinding light, and I was transported to another place. Pluto TV! Then I heard a voice.
Come with me if you want to live.
There were thousands of movies and shows, and they were all free.
The truth is ours.
It's just so beautiful.
On Pluto TV, free streaming of Terminator 2, Fringe, Arrow, The 100, and The X-Files may cause excitement, loss of sleep, and sudden belief in extraterrestrials. No credit cards or alien encounters necessary. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
Kayak gets my flight, hotel, and rental car right, so I can tune out travel advice that's just plain wrong.
Bro, Skycoin. Way better than points.
Never fly during a Scorpio full moon.
Just tell the manager you'll sue. Instant room upgrade.
Stop taking bad travel advice. Start comparing hundreds of sites with Kayak and get your trip right. Kayak. Got that right.
So I'm not entirely sure whether the Meadville police were on the scene first or state police, but anyway.
Yeah. That's an issue.
Yeah,
And there's nothing you really can do about it. I mean, we deal with murders and missing people in small towns all the time, and those are usually the most complicated cases because they have, especially if it's a sheriffs or you're elected, and you don't necessarily have to have a whole lot of law enforcement background to get elected to sheriff, and they don't really pay them hardly anything. So it's like you're not getting top tier people coming out and wanting to do this. You're getting people who just want to do it for a variety of reasons. So it's hard to really kind of work these cases and those things because number one, they don't have the resources. Number two, whether or not they don't have the skill set to really like that. Because I talk about this with a friend of mine I grew up with was a 20+ year homicide detective in New York City. And when I tell him some of the stories that we deal with on some of these things, these crimes, and he's just like, what, because they have, because you're talking about the biggest police force in the country, if not the world. And you have so many skilled detectives, working crimes. He goes, they literally, when they get something like this, they just flood it. They flood it and they work it and they work it and they work it, but because they have the resources, they have everything. They have the manpower, they have all the techniques, they have the crime labs at their disposal and stuff like that. So they can really flood it. And even with all that information, if there's not a body, it's hard. I mean, because, and it's easy. People think it's not easy to get rid of a body. It's pretty easy if you're thinking it out and you're planning it. You can make it so someone can't find this person.
Well, they weren't looking really.
They weren't.
So that's the thing too. He didn't have search. They weren't doing grid searches and they weren't doing all the things.
Well, they were of the area, like just the immediate area. But I can't say they traveled too far. There was no like APB put out. I don't think there was any large search or anyone on the lookout or any of that kind of stuff. But
so in that period of time where you met with that detective and he showed you that binder and basically said, we're convinced that he killed her. He goes, we just don't have a body. Did they offer in that period after that, did your adopted mom and everything, I mean, was there any kind of information because sometimes detectives will leak a little bit of information thinking that she could have been your mother?
So another one of those, I'll never forget these words. I didn't speak. Like I just kind of took it all in. I let my adopted mother do the talking and just listened, picked up my chin a couple times. But he looked right at me and he said, we have always believed that when you were old enough to start asking questions is when this case would start moving forward. And I was like, whoa. I mean, it takes my breath away just saying it now.
Yeah. Well, he anointed you. He anointed you, basically. He basically said, you're going to be the reason.
And that was decades before we are here now. Think about that. So this officer said that in 1993.
Wow.
93. And I just wasn't, I took those words and I kind of tucked them away, but I wasn't in a space to know how to, like, I wasn't emotionally prepared to take on that. I needed to go to college. I needed to make a career for myself. I needed to become independent. And those were all the things that in my mind, I was honoring my mother at the same time by doing these things and making myself self-sufficient and not dependent on anyone or anything. I'm very independent and that was important to me. And I believe my mother was very independent, but solving her case or even taking a look at it, I couldn't take on at that time.
You're a kid. Right? I mean, it's such a huge, the fact that what you were exposed to at such a young, early age, the fact that you've you had to be their interpreter at like 5 years old and have to be their gatekeeper to the outside world. I mean, it's just, that's an enormous amount of responsibility for a 5-year-old who's just trying to, who's still, you probably didn't even know how to tie your shoes yet. Right. It's just like, it's incredible. It's incredible.
No, I was probably tying my shoes at 3. No,
I'm sure you were, but I'm just saying most 5-year-olds aren't.
Well, listen,
just emotionally and just,
a huge burden as a child to have to be the parent to the parents. I can relate to that. It's a lot. It's a heavy burden for a child, and emotionally, it's when you're the emotional, what they lean on, or they're confiding in you, or you're taking care of them. It's a burden. And
that was a time that I was working very hard to push all that behind me.
Sure, as a teenager.
And try to be, the proverbial, perfect daughter, and going to college, and, white picket fence and all that. Like, I didn't want all that ugliness to be part of my identity.
You're already defined your identity. You're on that road. I mean, because that's what they say. Is like, when you get to that age where you're graduating high school, you're going to college. I mean, they say it's like mentally for you, it's like we all kind of try to kill off our parents in our brain because we want to cut the cord, emotionally. So we're like, what if, I'm going to be going out here. I have to start preparing myself for the outside world. I don't want to have to rely on all this other stuff. I think everybody does that. And that's part of the rebellion thing that happens when, and where you're just kind of like not listening to them, even though they're giving you sound advice. You fortunately went from having no parental structure at all to having basically a fairy godmother come into this situation. Right. So you appreciated what was going on. Most kids who are, 17, 18 at the end of high school year, are all they're thinking about is, I just want to get out of my house. I want to get away from my parents. I want to go to college, or I want to go away, go into the military. I want to get a job. I want to move out, all those things. So you were emotionally, you were the opposite stuff, because they've created a nice bubble for you, and and a great environment for you to thrive, as opposed to the environment you were in where your dad, all he did was talk down to you. But I want to go back to what that detective said to you. He set things in motion when he said that to you.
Yeah. I didn't realize it at the time, but he did.
Yeah. And he was very smart. Very smart man, because he, he had no idea where it was going to go, but he wanted to let you know that this is, because I think that's a very powerful thing that he said to you.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Incredible.
Yeah. At that time, I, as I said, was just not able to take that on, but the seed was planted, and I, carried on. I went to college, and there was a professor that was very well known. Jim Fisher is his name. He was a retired FBI agent and was teaching in the criminal justice program. Now, that wasn't where I was. That wasn't my degree, but I had friends who had him and were talking about, like, he just wrote a book and blah, blah, blah. And my wheels are turning. So as much as I'm saying, I am not diving into this, I'm not looking at this, I still always had it like in the back of my head. It was always there. So as my friends, my college friends, were talking about this professor, I thought, I wonder if he could help. So I called him and I asked for an appointment. He met with me. I told him my mother's case. He said, I'm going to see what I can do. I'm going to call a couple people. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Like, maybe this guy can help. And I was so excited. And it was really the first time I made efforts to solve the mystery. It was, I don't believe I had done anything on my own initiative until that point. And, he called a couple times and like asked a couple questions, said he was looking into it, asked me some different things, and then called and asked to meet with me. And I thought, oh my gosh, what could he have to tell me? Like he actually wants me to come into his office so he could tell me in person. This has got to be good, and someone of this caliber probably has connections and he's got to know something. So I remember like skipping to his office. Like, I cannot believe this. I can't believe this day. I can't believe this moment. I need to remember everything about this. And I go in to his office, and it took like, he was kind of like stoic and, not like all huggy and warm and fuzzy. And I remember, I wrote about it in my book. I remember thinking, this guy's about to get a big old bear hug. Like, I wanted to just grab him and hug him and say, thank you so much. But so I sat down, and I'm, all excited and waiting for him to tell me this great news. And all of a sudden you could just feel the air change. And he takes a deep breath and he says, well, and like my bottom fell out. And he said, I got to tell you, Alison, there's just nothing to go on. They've done as much as they can with what they have, and there's just no evidence to build on. And it was like,
that must have been just crushing for you.
It was absolutely crushing. Like I said, it was the first time I took initiative, and I thought for sure he was going to be the savior, to fix everything. And, not really even understanding the complexity of the case at that point. Just thinking somebody just figured out, somebody just solved it already, and I never heard from him again after that. I remember just being very sad. And I thought, once again, like my coping strategy is push it out and move on.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Stuff it.
Push and go. Shortly after that, so right before I went to college, it was like the end of my junior year, beginning of my senior year, I think, is when my mother was declared legally dead, which offered me Social Security benefits and my brother, which I was able to use to get me through the whole first year of college. Paid for my books, helped pay for a car to get there. So it did a lot for me. So my mother helped me get through my first year of college, which is, makes me smile. But it also, there was never an ending. It was kind of like this, bouncing question mark. And, my adoptive mother, Judy, said, what do you think about doing a memorial service for her? And I thought, well, I guess since she was declared legally dead, there should be something to follow. But it was hard to know, like, would anyone come? Like, because she's not, like, we didn't find her, it's not solved. It's kind of like this question. So part of me was thinking, like, do I schedule this whole thing based on a question, based on unanswered questions? But she was adamant, and she said, nope, let's do this. We'll invite your family, who I didn't even know at the time. Like, at the time I knew who they were, but it had been so many years since I had seen my mother's side of the family because of my father. Like, he forbade them to have any contact with me. So Judy, my adoptive mother, reached out to them and we made like a whole invitation and sent invitations out, and we did a funeral mass. And, we had readers just like at the mass, and we had a sharing time where my uncles got up, and you'll hear from them next week. And they both got up and shared their experience with her. And it was actually, kind of a heartwarming time where people were telling neat stories about her. And my brother and I got up and read letters to my mother, which was something I had never done before, like really thought about what I would say to her. And it was such a loving time. The church was full. It was a tiny little country church. The church was full. The musician was a cousin and had written a song called We Are Family that she played on her guitar, and everyone sang. There were like little printed leaflets that had the words to the song on it, so everybody could sing. It was just perfect until it wasn't. So my adoptive mother, Judy, had reached out to my father prior to this event and asked if she could have pictures because I had nothing. So he still lived in the town that we lived in. So she stopped at his house and asked him, said that we are doing this memorial service for her, and asked if she could have some photo albums just so we could, have some pictures to set out at the memorial service because I had nothing. And he gave it to her, said, I want it back, bring it back when you're done. She made copies of everything and returned the photo albums. And we thought that was that, we were able to do a nice little display with her picture, and even were able to put her picture on the invitations, blah, blah, blah. So right before the service started, I'm up front with my brother Aaron and my adoptive parents, and so are her family, cousins, uncles, whatever, in the front. And literally you could hear the whole church go, and I was like, what is going on? And I turned around and Bud was standing in the back of the church. And I was instantly pissed. Like, the nerve of you to show up here. And I thought, my uncles are going to clobber him. And I'm sure that in that moment, my adoptive parents were like, oh crap. So they literally got up and they looked at me and said, we got this. And I was like, okay. And mass is already in motion. Like, we're already in, the service. They got up, went to the back of the church and talked to him. I guess they told him that he could sit in the back of the church because they don't want to make a big scene. We had, so that whole time, people are talking about my mother. People are telling stories about my mother. Aaron and I read letters to my mother, and he is sitting in the audience that whole time.
It's like I'm speechless. Like,
right. The whole time.
I mean, he was saying that she ran away, that she was not dead. So now here he is acknowledging that she's potentially dead.
Yeah. And I don't know what was in his mind, except for maybe he thought that it would look bad if he wasn't there. Like, I don't know. He knew about it because she asked for the photo album. He was not invited to it. So he made that decision, on his own. But so they sat back with him, which also made me mad because they should have been with me, supporting me and being there for me. But they had to go be bouncers and sit by him to make sure that he didn't do anything stupid and that nobody attacked him, right there in church. And the whole time, like, I'm on eggshells, but more than anything, I was angry. Like, the nerve of you to show up here, and I think everybody felt that way. Everybody was looking back, probably giving him daggers, nothing he wasn't used to, but the nerve to show up. Now, when church was done, the priest welcomed everyone to the social hall, which was like right next door, kind of attached to the church. And there was like dinner and whatever. Well, my parents said to him, if you want to grab something to eat and then go, that would be fine. Almost like saying, go now before everybody comes, and he did not go to the hall. He left after that. So I was thankful. But then that was the talk, that time should have been about my mother. And instead, him showing up made everybody go, what? And the talk is about him being there and how dare him and whatever.
Did you make eye contact with him at all during that time? Or your back was facing him the whole time?
Right. Because I was in the front. So I turned to see that he was there thinking, what? And, when I'm up on the altar reading my letter, I couldn't look at him because there's no way I'd be able to get through that if I looked at him. So I just kind of kept my focus on the letter. And, looked at my grandparents and looked at people I knew who loved her, and he heard my words, and we didn't have an interpreter there. So he would have had to be close enough to see my lips to be able to read my lips to know what I was saying, because I wasn't expecting anyone who was deaf to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure how much he understood or was able to figure out, but him just being there was atrocious.
Pretty brazen.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there wasn't an outburst against him.
I am too. And I think the only reason why there wasn't was because my parents got up and went back and kind of blocked.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it probably would have been a problem. For sure.
Yeah. Said,
Unreal.
Yeah, he made it about him.
He did. And it always has been. And even all the way to, we know that he confessed. Even the confession was about him all the way through.
Well,
it's always been about him, his needs, what's best for him. Yeah. Very selfish.
And narcissistic. I mean, obviously
very
narcissistic psychopathy we deal with a lot with Laura Brand, with our serial killer whisperer. We hear about this quite a bit, about how there's just no empathy for anyone else. It's always about them and always about fulfilling their needs and their, whatever they want. Yeah.
And
so
when he let go of me, he was able to attach to Aaron, and then Aaron became like the number one interpreter and this, that, and the other. So he didn't have a need for me when he replaced me with Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately for Aaron, but
yeah. And where was Aaron during this whole time when you went to go live with your teacher?
So Aaron was with him for a short period of time, but he continued to abuse Aaron, beat him up. Aaron is like skinny, tall, just not muscular and big, but the stature of my father is like 6'4", big, broad. He's a big dude. And when I went to live with them, Aaron took a lot of the brunt. A few years after I had left, Aaron was in, I say an altercation, but that's not right. Like, he was being beat up by my father, and they lived upstairs. And there were people who their daughter knew Aaron, and they probably knew Aaron, I would guess, like he came over or whatever, because they lived nearby. But they were walking, this couple were just walking around the block, and they could hear Aaron screaming and crying and Bud yelling, and then Aaron being pushed down the stairs.
Aww.
So they ran to the house and said, let us take him. Let him stay with us for a little while. You guys figure things out. Let him stay with us. And my father was like, so be it. He is more than happy to relinquish any responsibility, and feel free. And so Aaron stayed with them for a little while. And at that point, he actually filed for a restraining order. So my father, we just said it's all about him.
Mm-hmm.
My father contacted the police and said he wanted to put a restraining order on Aaron, that Aaron was being aggressive, and that's how all of this turned into this Aaron being thrown down the stairs.
How old
Aaron
was he?
The aggressor. Like 14, 15, something like that.
That's awful.
The master gaslighter.
Seriously.
Totally. So I find out through, my adoptive mother that this was happening. And the people that were taking care of Aaron asked if we would come to court. And I was like, yeah, I will. So we went to court, and, Bud presents this like, he's aggressive and he's this, that, and the other. I mean, if you just looked at the two of them, you'd be like, what? But I can't believe it. But Aaron then countered with, he threw me down the stairs, all these abuse things. So the judge granted a joint restraining order.
Oh my God.
Right?
On
Against
a 14-year-old. Oh my God.
I want to to say he was 15 because he was close. Because shortly after that, he got emancipated.
Yeah, emancipated.
Well, this is the thing. Again, this is back in what, the 80s and the early 90s. Like this was a different time. That would not happen today.
Never.
Well, you don't know.
Well, the other thing is, money talks too. And
Right.
Aaron was getting Social Security benefits because I was going to college, blah, 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 all of that. So Aaron was getting Social Security benefits, but Bud was taking it. Like Aaron never saw it. So when Aaron moved in with these other people who were godsends to him, they somehow contacted Social Security and got him removed from as the caretaker or whatever you call that, the person
guardian
in charge. They revoked his rights, and then that was directed towards Aaron, so he got the money instead. And then lo and behold, Bud wants him back probably because of the money.
Sure.
But Aaron was not going back. That's when he got himself emancipated so that he didn't have to go back. Now he kind of bounced around a lot. He stayed with different families, different friends. Some places he paid rent because he had Social Security, and that's kind of, he just bebopped around, until he was old enough to just be on his own, and then, worked full-time jobs. And so his story, unfortunately, is a little harsher because he didn't have that soft place to land like I did. But, again, Bud made it about him. If you looked at the two of them side by side, it's just unreal. And the judge granted a joint restraining order. Unreal.
That's unbelievable.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll stop there. And then next week, I want to hear about how you ended up getting a confession out of your father.
That is correct. So, all right. So I have a question for you as far as where we're headed. So
Okay, wait.
next week,
Hold on.
All right. So all right. So we'll just thank you, Alison, for sharing all of this week. I mean, it's just an amazing story, and it just gets deeper. So stay tuned for more from Alison Duiker next week, and
happy me.
We'll see you soon.